Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of our STEM Careers virtual sessions. This is a collaborative partnership between Nova Systemic, our Engineering Technologies division, and our Workforce Center here at Northern Virginia Community College. We're very excited to have a workshop today presented on salary negotiation and talking about all things related to, as we were saying earlier, money. And people love to talk about money. So we're really excited to have some amazing professionals who will be sharing some information with you shortly, and they will be introduced momentarily. So with that, I'm going to turn the next part of the session over to our colleagues with our NOVA workforce, Dana Fallon.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany. I'm Dana Fallon. I'm the Career Services Manager for the college. We manage Career Connection, which is the jobs database and career management system that students and employers have access to. So I'll put a note into the chat box later with the link to that, to Career Connection, so you can kind of follow up on those resources. Our presenters today, Joan Reuter and Julie Kohlbaugh, are with our board members with the Prince William Society for Human Resources Management, and we're really excited that they are able to join us and to present information to us as our subject matter experts. And I also wanted to thank Heidi Staub, who is also on the board with Prince William SHRM, who has been facilitating their involvement with NOVA, and we appreciate their time. So I'm going to go ahead and let Joan and Julie take over and introduce themselves and share all their information with us. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana. I'm going to share my screen now. So let me, hopefully I do this right. I think let's see. Can you see I just want to confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
And I just want, let's see, I'm just going to do, I hate when the thing from the Zoom gets in the way. So let's do from beginning. Okay, here we go. Okay, well, thank you, Dana, and we appreciate you reaching out to Prince William SHRM, and Julie and I are really excited to be presenting today. Wanted to kind of throw this over to Julie to do an introduction of Prince William SHRM and herself, and then I'll take over from there.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Before we begin the presentation, just want to tell you a little bit about the organization that Joan and I belong to, Prince William Society of Human Resource Management. So we are an affiliate of the National Society of Human Resource Management, and we're located in Prince William County with about 150 members. Our purpose is to enhance the capabilities of HR professionals who live and or work in our community. And we also like to make a positive impact in our community by partnering with businesses and colleges and universities to increase awareness and education about HR issues. I've had a lot of roles at Prince William SHRM. I'm currently the treasurer, and Joan is the director of sponsorship. So a little bit about me. I'm currently the Vice President of Human Resources for McDonough Bollier Peck. We're a consulting engineering firm in Fairfax. I've been in HR for over 20 years, and I'm a lifelong learner. My learning journey began back in 1986 when I became a student of Northern Virginia Community College. So I moved from England, and I didn't really know much about American history, so that's the first class I took. I was a part-time student off and on. Took a break to raise my kids and went back into the workforce and joined MVP in 2003, and then just kind of continued to education and certifications along the way. Finally got my associates, my bachelor's degree in business, and then finally my master's of human resource development in 2017. I've included my contact information on the screen there. If you have any questions after the session, I'm happy to answer any emails you might send me, or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So I'll let Joan introduce herself.
Thanks, Julie. Well, currently, where for the past 20 years, I've had my own consulting business, and we provide full service human resources consulting, but concentrating in the compensation and benefit areas. And so when Heidi reached out and said that, you know, the students were looking for some salary negotiation tips, I was like, hey, you know what? I'm the one that goes to these companies and tells them what to do. So what better way of giving you some insight is telling you what we advise your potential employers as far as what they should do with benefits and salaries, money. My background, I'm a math major, so I do have some geeky side to me, but I took a lot of art classes. You can kind of see my background if you still see that. I like to collect art and do art. So I have both sides of the brain working. My background, I've done work in benefit consulting. I was the manager of US compensation for Mobile Corporation. So I was really involved in all pay aspects that they had to deal with in the United States. I was director of comp and benefits for Nova Health System here in the area. So very familiar with all the things going on within the healthcare system. And also one of my first business deals I had when I started my business was actually managing ExxonMobil's US recruiting. We hired over 400 people in a year and a half because when they merged with Mobil, they realized that, you know, that they were typically a, you know, college recruiting only type organization and realized they had to start hiring experienced folks. So we helped them with that and got that going for them. And again, all these experiences, I think, will give you some insight as far as what are employers thinking. You know what you're going in with, but what are they thinking when you go for that negotiation session. So just to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today, the first two items I'm going to go over, and then Julie's going to pick up for the last two. But what I'm going to go over is really know what you want. You know, when you go into these discussions, what is it that you want to ask for? When you go into a negotiation, you have to be prepared. What are the things that you should be asking for? What facts do you need to compile before you go into the negotiation? Julie's going to pick up and talk about, okay, now once you're ready, how do you handle that negotiation? How do you handle those discussions? And also, how do you manage the outcome, regardless of whether it's what you wanted or maybe if it's not what you wanted? Now, one of the things we want to make sure is that going into today, we're assuming that your resume is in good shape, that you're meeting the qualifications of the job that you're, you know, going after. So those things are given, and I would assume that, you know, the college has resources for you if you need to review that, but make sure those things are in place before you go and start any kind of negotiation. So just to get started, and I know I can't see everybody, let's see if this works. Hopefully this video works. But I'd like everyone to get up, and I want to hear what you got to say. Show me the money. Let's get started, because that's what we're talking about today.
Show you the money. Show me the money. Show me the money. Show me the money. Show me the money. I need the money, Jerry. Show me the money. Jerry, you better yell. Show me the money.
Okay, well, hopefully this has gotten you a little pumped up for, oops, I don't want to go again. But before we go into this, one of the things, hopefully you don't go in and shouting, give me the money or show me the money, but really you need to go in with confidence. So, you know, underlying everything that we're going to talk about today, really is important that when you go in, that you're prepared, you're confident in asking what you want. Now, one of the things we just wanted to get from, you know, just to help us know who's here today is, you know, finding out some pieces of information about your background. So one of the things we want to find out is what's your study, what area of study, whether you're a current student or a previous student. We just want to get an idea of what everyone's you know, career aspirations are focused in. Oh, look at all those math and computer science. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's kind of spread out over the different areas. Just give, I guess, a few more seconds. Okay, it looks like we got a lot of people in different areas, and what I would say to you is regardless of the area of study, everything that we're going to talk about today is applicable. So, you know, nothing is specific. We're just trying to see, you know, where folks' aspirations are to give us an idea. So I'm going to end this. Let's see. So, you know, really kind of spread across all different areas. Okay, now if we go to the next polling question. What's your current status as far as full-time student? Do I have to end this? If we can go to the next polling. It was the same, this is the same polling question. There we go. So are you a full-time student, a part-time student working, a graduate looking for employment? I know that there are some alumni potentially that may be looking at this session. Other. Okay, so it looks like we've got kind of a mix of folks, full, part-time. And again, a lot of the stuff that we're going over today, you know, whether you're a student, whether you have had a job, whether you haven't had a job previously, all these things are going to be tools that you can use at any point, you know, in your career. Okay, and then if we go to the final question, we're looking at kind of what's everybody's negotiation comfort level. So are you just looking for some tips? Do you need assistance kind of a little bit more in all areas, or help? You know, you've just got no idea where to start. Okay. So we kind of spread out over, we've got a couple of people who need, you know, more help. And, you know, we're going to go over everything, you know, hopefully this will cover a lot of the things that you're looking to get out of today's session. And, you know, we were talking, you know, potentially maybe we'll have some follow-up sessions on this. And as Julie said, you know, her contact information, there was my website. You know, you can always find and contact, follow up with us if you have any follow-up questions in addition to what we're going to go over today. So if we kind of get started, you know, when you're talking about negotiation, you know, we've all negotiated in some way. You know, you've asked for an allowance increase. You've asked the teacher for an extension on something that was due. Maybe you negotiated prices for something on eBay. We've all had some kind of negotiation skills that we've used over the course of our life. And this is really nothing different. And one of the things you should, you know, you probably know when you're going into negotiations, you need the facts, you need to understand. And again, the other thing too is, you know, even though there are some folks who are students or alumni, at every point in your career, you're going to have to assess your situation, and there's probably going to be some time, you know, where you're going to have to negotiate, whether it's your salary for a job or for something regarding employment. Now, part of my work, a lot of times I'm asked to interview the employees of an organization that's reviewing their salaries. And when we're talking to a lot of new employees, we ask them, you know, what was it that attracted you to, you know, work here? And the top two things are typically the reputation of the company and the opportunity. No one says, you know, I came here for the money. You know, those are the two things. After they've joined the company, they go, gee, you know, there were some questions that I should have asked, or things that I should have known, you know, that should have been part of the negotiation when I took this job. So we're going to get started and get into some of the information that I think would be helpful for you to have. So here, you know,
I guess that's fair.
Pam thinks it's fair. SpongeBob doesn't. You know, what does fair and equitable mean to you? And this is another question I ask a lot of employees when I'm talking to clients. I say, do you think your pay is fair? Usually no one answers. Everyone's afraid, to say, yeah, I'm paid fairly, because, you're afraid to say that because that means maybe you won't get more. But you know what? If I said to you that Pam and SpongeBob both got paid $50,000, they may have the same responses. Pam may think it's fair, and Sponge may think it's not fair. On the other hand, another way of looking at it is, I may have offered SpongeBob $50,000, and he said, yeah, that was fair. That's exactly what I wanted. And then I went and offered Pam 70. Now suddenly, what SpongeBob thought was fair is not fair anymore. So when you're thinking about fair and equitable, it's a perception. Ooh, stop, Pam. Fair and equitable, it's a perception. It's what you view as something that's fair based on your personal needs. And the thing is, what you have to remember when you're going to talk to your potential employer is it has to be a meeting of the minds when you're going into negotiations. So you have to make sure that what you view as fair and equitable is how they define fair and equitable. And typically what companies look at is making sure that people are treated equitably inside the company, and that they're aligned with the outside market as far as competitiveness. So that's a thing that you need to make sure that you understand, that what you may think is fair may not be the definition that they have determined. So if you're looking for a job that needs to pay $50,000 and a company says, well, we can't offer more than 40, it's not that it's unfair, it's just not meeting your needs as what you want to have. So let's look at it in a different way. Let's look at what's the right price, for example, for an entry-level accountant. Is it 40,000? Is it 52,000? Is it 60 or 75,000? What is the right price for what you pay entry-level accountant? Here you have two people. One person wants, the 65,000. One says 100 million. What is the right price? And the answer is they're all correct. And you go, wait, how can that be? Well, you know what? Different companies pay different rates. It could be based on geography or industry, which are the two main factors that would affect kind of the level of salaries that you would be looking for at an entry level. And those are key. So if you're, talking to someone who's in San Francisco and saying, how much do they pay for, that job, same one that I'm looking for, they're going to be very different rates based on what the going rate of accountants are in that area versus in the DC area. The same thing with industry. You look at healthcare, you look at nonprofit, you look at for-profit, you look at some of the high-tech companies, they're all going to be paying very different. And it could be for the same job. So those are the things that you need to take into consideration when you're saying, how am I going to negotiate? What's the fair price for the job that I'm looking for? The other thing that's important is that when you look and apply for a position, don't just go by title. Some companies use different titles. So for example, an entry-level accountant, one company might call that an accounting manager, even though it's not a manager. They just may use those titles. So really make sure that you're looking at the same role for the position. So when you're looking and applying, you have an accurate account of what the role is and what the appropriate or corresponding salary is. Now there's tons of sources for this kind of data. A lot of times companies will post it, with the salary with the posting. There's salary.com and D.com, PayScale. Now those are all online resources. I will tell you that most of them are self-reported data, so you need to look at that and use that as a reference and not necessarily as an absolute. Another great resource is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. They have information as far as job market, hiring trends, starting salaries based on your area, your degree. They have a ton of other information, articles and support information for professional development, career development, what other things? the job market, we talk career readiness, all kinds of really, beneficial information that you should find valuable. And finally, you should, utilize the Northern Virginia Community College Career Center. They have information on labor market data, including salary data and other career resources that you can tap into. So there's a lot of information that you can use to find out what's the correct salary, how are organizations paying for the type of job that I'm looking for. Now, the other thing that goes into how companies pay, in addition to geography and the industry that they're in, is their philosophy. And this is a great thing to talk about when you go for an interview, is just asking a company, what's your vision, mission, values of the organization? What's your people values? What's your compensation or rewards philosophy? And what the philosophy goes into is how they want to reward their employees. So for example, business strategies and goals, what are their goals? Are they a mature organization? Are they a growth, a startup? Are they looking for huge growth in certain, kind of key areas? So based on that, they may reward folks, based on that strategy that they have within their organization. From a standpoint of value added contributions, what are they looking for in their employees? Some value, employees who are team members, who have that team spirit. Others, kind of like what Julie's talking about, learning. Some organizations value employees who learn, who are continually, looking to improve themselves and therefore improving the organization. Or there may be high performance, we're going to reward people who work hard, but when you work hard, you're going to, contribute to the success, and we're going to pay you accordingly, and those are things you need to look at as far as, is that aligned with what you want in an organization? The other thing is competitors. Who else are they looking for talent in business? Who are the other companies that would be their competitors? Where are they looking for talent? And that's kind of getting interesting as far as the sourcing for talent. Whereas some organizations, maybe last year, were just looking in the DC market. Now they're looking nationwide, more remote, more virtual organizations. So that's really opening up, where they're looking for talent. And that, from the same token, for you, when you're looking at where to work, it may not just be the DC market. There may be a lot of other opportunities that are available where you can stay in this area, but, work for companies that are based somewhere else. And finally, financial resources. And these are all things you can either, discuss at the interview or kind of research the company online. But financial resources, I mean, if you have an organization where, well, hopefully they're not in Chapter 11, things like that. Well, maybe their financial resources are not, as solid, and perhaps they're not going to be able to pay as well. Whereas, a company that's doing really well, their stocks are doing really well, are probably going to be in a better situated position. Or you look at nonprofits. Nonprofits may be doing well, but if they lose their grants, there could be issues as far as their ability to be able to pay high salaries compared to some other organizations. So these are all things that would drive how a company pays for various positions. The other thing too, we always talk about is it just the money? I know we started out the session, we were like, show me the money, but is it just the money? And one of the things we learn over the years is, money is not a satisfier. It's great when you get that offer. It's great when you get that promotion and you look at your check and there's a few dollars more, but what, the next day it's gone. You're not really thinking about, that extra money. Salary is viewed as a dissatisfier. So what that means is it's got to be there, but if it's not, then I'm not happy. And so when you look at a job, there's this Hertzberg motivation theory. You need to be happy with both of these things. You need to be happy on the hygiene factors and the motivational factors. And what that is, the hygiene factors are kind of the care and feeding. I get paid right, I got security, I work with good people, the company is good, all those things that kind of make you feel comfortable within a position. And the thing is, if you only have that, it's like, okay, it's a nice place, but the job sucks. There's no opportunities. They never, reward me and all that. That's not going to work. On the same token, if you have the other thing, you've got the perfect job. It's everything you wanted, but you're not getting the pay you want. You really have, no personal life because all you're doing is working. The company is, and that's not going to work. So really, you want to look at both sides. So although, we're focusing on, negotiating that salary, it's really important to look at all the factors when you're thinking about, is this the right job for me? So, when you go into the job, there's really 4 areas that I would say that you should look at. Now we're going to, the focus today was on the cash compensation, but really, I would suggest to you really look at all those, because like I said, when you go into a negotiation, you're not just going in and saying, okay, 50,000, take it or leave it. When you negotiate, you have to have some bargaining. So when we talk about cash compensation, well, there's base salary, but there's also bonuses. So perhaps there's some, a job may be paying lower in base, but perhaps there's an opportunity for bonuses or premiums, like a Nova Health System. A lot of the nurses, they're working their nighttime, weekends, they get these huge shift premiums that are part of their pay, and that could add up to a lot of, money. And then there's overtime, and we're just going to kind of lightly touch on that. So, there are jobs that are exempt or non-exempt from overtime. And if it's a non-exempt job, it would be entitled to overtime pay of 1.5 pay for any time over 40 hours. So that's one of the things to ask about, is this job exempt or non-exempt? How many hours would I typically work? Because that'll be some of the components of how you get paid and what your total cash is. So, that's the cash piece. But, I would say don't forget about these others. Indirect compensation. That's your medical and health. And I know a lot of times, when you're starting out, you may still be covered under your parents', medical plan. You might not even think about it. But these are important things, though. The medical, the dental, the vision, life insurance, disability insurance, your leave, vacation time, personal time, holidays, all the things that are not cash per se, but are value. And I'll tell you that companies typically spend about 30% of your salary on these benefits. So it's not something that's insignificant and really should be taken into account. So for example, if you go in and they say, well, your salary is this and you wanted something higher, but on the retirement plan, for example, they're going to give you a 6% match. That may be something to consider as a offset to how much money you want to get. Now, some of the other things too that are kind of the soft side, of your rewards package is recognition and development and work life. So under recognition and development are some of the things we talked about, career development, learning opportunities, how often you're given performance reviews, what kind of rewards or recognitions do they have for their employees? Do they provide a coach or mentor, while you're employed there? Those are things that, perhaps from an immediate standpoint, you might not think as important, but those are going to be great things that you're going to take on that are going to be valuable, that are going to add to your buying power, how much you're worth when you go into your next job or your next opportunity. Now, the work life is also a thing to consider. What's the culture of the organization? Is there work life, balance? We talked a little bit about, the virtual remote, do they provide telework opportunities? Some people find it very important when companies have some kind of community or outreach component. Do they do certain, volunteer work that you're, aligned with? Do they provide dependent care? Is there well-being? Do they provide EAP, employee assistance program, where you have a source to tap in if you have concerns or issues that you need to talk about? So these are all things that are really important. So while we're going to talk about negotiating that salary, what I would say to you is not only have in your back pocket how much you want, how much the job is worth, how that aligns with the organization that you're interviewing, but also consider some of these other things as kind of your bargaining tools. Maybe the cash is a little low, but can I get something on these components that'll be just as or perhaps more valuable to you. So that's my piece, is kind of getting you ready, knowing what you want, being prepared when you go in for the negotiation with all the facts that you need, to really come out with a successful outcome, hopefully. So I'm going to go to the next. So I'm going to play this slide to get you ready to negotiate, and then I'm going to hand it over to Julie.
I want to actually get paid.
All right, what do you want?
$600 for the day, plus overtime if we go over 8 hours. I'll do my own hair and makeup, and I want you to pay for the 6 weekends of the acting camp that my mom can't afford.
$50 for the day and a 2-week acting class at the YMCA nearest you.
$500 and a 4-week acting class.
$300 and a 3-week class.
Done.
I would have done it for $500.
I would have done it for the experience.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it now over to Julie.
All right, great. So when you're applying for a job, or maybe when you're in an interview and you're asked the question about how much money are you looking for, make sure you've done your homework ahead of time using the sites that Joan suggested earlier. At least have some kind of idea about what a good salary range might be for the position you're applying for. If you're submitting an application online, if you can, put negotiable under required salary. Sometimes they won't allow you to do that and you have to put an amount, but if you can, put negotiable, and that way you're not going to get initially eliminated based on the amount of salary you're asking for. Another important thing to know is your market. What's the market like right now? Is it hot or is it cold? There's always jobs that are in more demand than others. If you think about what we're going through now with the coronavirus, hospitality and entertainment industry is really, really suffering. But then you've got jobs such as, IT jobs, such as web developers or database administrators. They're in demand, as well as some healthcare roles or delivery drivers and some construction workers. So you'll have a lot more luck negotiating a salary if the job that you're applying for is in demand and you have the skills. Another good number to know is what's the current unemployment rate? So earlier this year, we were dealing with the lowest unemployment rate we've seen in almost 50 years. It was 3.5%, I believe, at its lowest. It's 11% right now. It's not as bad as it was. It was 14% a few weeks ago. So that's a good number to know, especially in your industry. Also, the voluntary quits rate. This is a rate that people are voluntarily quitting their jobs, and you can look at the trends. Both of these numbers you can see from a website called the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS.gov. You can go in and look at the tables and just kind of look at the trends. Unemployment going up? Is it going down? But how about the quits rate? If the quits rate is going up, it's generally a healthy job market. So those are good things to know. And also know what the minimum wage is for your state. So the federal rate right now is $7.25 an hour. And that's also the rate currently in Virginia, but that's about to change. So as of, I think it's May of 2021, it's going up to $9.50, $11 in 2022, and $12 in 2023. Other states have even higher minimum wages. So if you're looking for jobs in other states, make sure that you know what that number is. Another way to get lots of good information is by joining professional associations. A good example is Society of Human Resource Management that Joan and I belong to. There's an association for just about every profession out there. It's a good way, it can give you a lot of good information, also connect you to other people in your profession where you can start building that network. All right, so you've gone through the application process, you've gone through the interview process, and you get a salary offer. So what do you do if the offer is lower than you expected? And you've got some data to support it. You've got some options. So the first option is you can just accept the offer. Maybe you really, really want to work for this company, or you really want this type of experience for your resume. You may just say, it's not what I wanted, but I'm just going to go ahead and accept it. The second thing is, just like Joan mentioned before she turned it over to me, it's the whole package. Look at the benefits package, look at the 401k match, look at whether or not there are educational opportunities available to you. A nice, rich benefits packet might make up the difference from, you know, maybe it's $1 or $2 an hour that you thought you would like to make. Or you can try to negotiate, right? So you can politely state that, you know, I was hoping for a higher amount, and you can state what the amount is. So here's just a sample, sentence. You know, based upon the salary research I've done for this position, I was hoping for a slightly higher amount. Is there any room for negotiation on this point? And the answer may be yes, it may be no. If it's no, a good question to ask is, well, when would my salary be reviewed? So maybe it's 3 months from now. We're going to put you through like a probationary period, and we'll take a look at your salary. Let's see how well you do the job, how well you fit in with the company. There are some things that you can do to just automatically set yourself up for pay increases. So once you get that job, you're in the door, do the job to the best of your ability. This is the best thing that you can do for yourself, right? Don't just show up for 40 hours, do the bare minimum expectations of the job, and then go home, right? Make sure that you've talked to your supervisor about what they expect of you. A good question to ask in an interview is, how can I be successful in this position? What would you like to see me achieve in this position? And I always like to give this advice is, you be the person your supervisor just absolutely could not do without. If they had a 5-person staff and they were told by their supervisor, you need to let one person go, make that one person not be you. Make sure that you're their right hand, and they just simply can't do without you. And you also need to continuously learn and expand your skill set. So if you're lucky enough to be part of a company that gives you tuition assistance benefits, take full advantage of those. Continue your education and get certifications. There are many different certifications that are available out there. The company that I work for, MVP, we encourage everyone to get certifications. So that's from whether you're an HR professional, whether you're an administrative assistant, you're a construction manager, you're an engineer. There are a wide variety of certifications that all help position you for better pay down the line, whether it's with your existing company or whether it's for a future company. Take every opportunity to learn, right? You're going to be around people who've been doing your job or in your industry a lot longer than you. So watch, ask questions, take every opportunity to get on the job training. And if your company offers you the opportunity to attend conferences or seminars, do that. Take your lunch hour and spend your time learning instead of, sitting and playing on your iPhone. Just take every opportunity to learn. So maybe you've been in your job for a while and you think, it's time to ask for a pay increase. So unless your job duties or responsibilities have drastically changed since you were first hired, within the first year, don't even think about asking for an increase. A lot of companies will do annual performance reviews where you'll sit down and you'll talk about what you've accomplished over the past year. But not every organization does them. So if your organization doesn't, make sure you're tracking your own performance, right? Keep a list of the new skills that you've learned, the training you've completed, and make sure you're setting goals for yourself. You own your career, right? Make sure you have a goal. It's likely going to change as you move along your career path, but at least start out with a destination in mind and be clear what it is that you want, and take steps to get there. You can always amend your plan later on. Any pay increase that you get is going to likely be composed of a couple of different things. So it will be the current economic situation, right? Are we going through a period of growth in the economy, or are we kind of backing off? Are we in a recession? The company's financial situation that Joan talked about earlier, is this a startup? Maybe they don't have a lot of cash. And then also your performance and the achievement of your goals is going to play into any increase that you might receive as well. Some other things to consider. Know what the average raises are out there. Even better if you know what the average is for your industry. There are a number of places you can find this out. I've listed those sites on the website. For 2020, average raises were just above 3%. Another good number to know is the Consumer Price Index. So this is a measure of prices paid by consumers for goods and services. A lot in the past, it used to be used for setting raises. It's really not the case anymore, but it's still good information to have. If the CPI is greater than the raise that you're being offered, it's at least a good discussion point that you can have when you're talking to your boss about a salary increase. Have your data ready if you're asking. And the most important thing here is to be calm and professional and don't get emotional. If you're told no, I know it's a deflating feeling. You're not going to be feeling good. You're going to be super disappointed, but make sure that you're not emotional. And don't start retaliating and saying, fine, all I'm going to do now is the bare minimum, right? They won't give me the pay that I think I deserve. You've got your professional reputation on the line here. You need to make sure you stay positive and professional and continue doing that job to the best of your ability. And if you don't get the money that you want, is there something else that's important to you? Maybe you'd like to work at home a couple of days a week. Maybe you would like some more education assistance. Maybe it's an extra day or two of vacation. So back to that, remembering it's about the whole package. And sometimes maybe you've tried everything or maybe you've just outgrown the organization and you just need to move on and look for another job. So make sure when you leave that you're polite and professional about leaving. It's okay to say the reason why you're leaving. Give 2 weeks written notice. We see a lot of email resignations now. I really like the email with an attached letter that says thank you for the opportunity to work for the organization. And for everything that I've learned. And don't burn bridges. It's a small world out there. Companies merge all the time. People move jobs. You may be working alongside your supervisor at another company later on down the line. So make sure that you're maintaining good professional relationships with those that you worked with and stay connected. A lot of people like to connect on LinkedIn and stay in touch. So it's your reputation that's at stake, and that reputation is going to follow you. So that's really all I had. We can open it up for questions if anyone has any.
For the students, if you all would type your questions in the chat, and we have our team from the workforce who will be going through and reading those questions out for our presenters to respond to. Another thing to also mention is, as you're typing things in the chat, if there are things that weren't covered that you thought might have been covered, you can also type that type of a question in the chat too.
We'll have one question that has popped up that I'll relay. It's what salary questions are safe to ask at the interview? Do
you want me to take that one, Joan, or?
Why don't you start and then I can follow up on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's perfectly okay to ask what the range is for the position if it hasn't been stated before. That's a perfectly reasonable question. I think it's also reasonable to ask how often are salaries reviewed, right? Some companies might do it every 6 months. Most companies do it every year, but I think that's important too, because again, maybe you don't quite get what you want when you first come in, but if you're going to get a review in 3 months from now, you can hang on for 3 months, right? Do a great job, and maybe you'll get a small increase then, or you hang on until your annual performance review.
Right, and just to kind of follow up on that, really know what the rate of pay is, because if it is overtime eligible, how many hours are expected that you would be working in a normal week, and if you're not overtime eligible, how many hours are you going to be working a week? Because if you're not overtime eligible and you get offered 50,000, whether you work 40 hours or 60 hours, you're still getting that same rate of pay. So, those are things to consider. So even though you may be getting paid the same, are you, what are the hours that you're going to be asked to work or expected to work?
I mean, another thing too, when we talk about, you talked about your compensation philosophy. When it's okay to ask the company, what is your compensation philosophy? So it might, do they like to lead the market with higher salaries? Do they lag the market, or do they meet the market? I think those are okay questions to ask as well. And you'll likely find that a lot of startup companies, they might not have a lot of money to throw at salaries, but maybe you've got opportunities for stock or really big bonuses at the end of the year. So those are good things to ask as well.
We know that our participants can also add the yes and no option that's on their screens on their computers. But I guess maybe by a yes or no, how many of our participants have recently, I guess maybe in the last 6 months, interviewed for a job? So I was just wondering if that might be something to get an idea of how many people have actually been interviewing. So you can just use the yes option if you've been interviewing recently. It's basically like a raise or the raise hand feature.
Thanks. While we're getting that information too, another follow-up question is how to react when you find out your coworkers with similar responsibilities are far better taken care of financially. I think that's a question I've was thinking myself, and how do you compare yourself to other people, and what do you do if you feel that maybe you are not being it's fair and equitable?
Yeah, I mean, that's gotten more and more, it used to be you don't talk about salaries, that's going away, everybody talks. But that gets back to the equitable, you're doing the same job, but are you truly the same person? Are you do you have the same amount of experience? Are you doing exactly the same job? Those are all things to consider about whether people are being paid fairly against others. And yeah, if there's a question as far as it doesn't seem that I'm being paid fairly and equitably amongst my peers, that's a question to ask your supervisor. What is the basis of how I'm paid? The other thing is performance. All those things that may go into how much how a salary is determined are things that you need to assess for yourself, and then to follow up with your supervisor as far as, okay, can we go over these items, and do I warrant a review?
I think you can also talk to your HR department too, about where do I fit in the range for this, the job that I'm in. So, I mean, oftentimes when there's a disparity, it's something like Joan just said. Maybe it might be a higher level of education. Let's say the job requires, or prefers a master's degree. The other person that's doing the same job as you, maybe they have it and maybe you don't. Maybe that person has more experience than you, but you're going to fit somewhere on a range. And I think it's a fair question to ask where I fit on that range. What can I do to increase my pay without coming out and saying, hey, you're paying Joe more than you're paying me, right? So there are some questions you can ask. I mean, if you're doing exactly the same job as someone, you were hired at the same time and someone's making more money than you may have to directly address that. But I think there's some other ways to get there too.
Great. That's super helpful. The other, as you're kind of going down that path, more follow-up is related to if the managers don't really have a clear answer is what's making, me successful. Is that the time to leave the company, or what's the best way then to assess your next move and position yourself to move forward then?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I was going to say, that's, as Julie was saying, it might be the time you go to your manager first and then you go to HR. I would say, you have to assess, do you want that manager to affect an opportunity? If there's something, that they're doing that's wrong, don't necessarily take that as a decision to leave. Really go to the HR, explain the situation, because there may be things that can be done to help you stay within the job that you might love. I wouldn't take leaving as a first option.
Yeah. Agreed. And it depends how badly you want the role and the experience that you're in. How long have you been there? You don't want to job hop. You don't want to be ideally somewhere less than a couple of years really for your first job, because employers will look at that. If you're at one place for a year and another place somewhere else, I mean, maybe it's there are things you can do. Maybe it's your performance that's lacking. I mean, hopefully if you ask those questions, you're going to get good answers. And if you don't feel like you're getting good answers and you really feel like you're doing absolutely everything you can and you're still not getting the pay that you want, then I would say, you know, don't give up very easily. Just try everything and be convinced that you've tried everything you can and it's just not going to work. That's when I would say it's time to move on. Don't be rash.
And while we're waiting, if anybody else has any questions, I guess you've mentioned a couple of resources. The Bureau of Labor Statistics is one. I posted the link to our labor market information research at NOVA. That page has career ladders, which sort of shows career paths and progressions. The information on salary is in there that you can check in the region by job, by occupations, educational levels, to give you some resources to do that research, you know, for the first job out that you're looking for, the initial salary negotiation, or as you're looking at raises, you can find, you know, some of that information out there to arm yourself with some data versus, as Joe mentioned, emotion, or just comparing yourself without having a lot of blindly to maybe somebody else that's in the company. And then the next question popped up, are there any inappropriate questions you should be careful of asking, I guess, either at the initial interview and at a point where you're looking to look for a raise?
Well, I would say don't make it all about the money and make sure you're asking in a professional manner. I mean, there's a way to say it, right? Like, when would my salary be reviewed, or versus, well, how soon after I start will I get a raise, right? That could be taken very differently, but it could be asked in a very professional way that, and you said at the interview, I mean, same thing, right? You know, I think it would be, ask about it as it relates to your professional development and what you can do versus just making it solely about the money. It's the whole package, it's the experience, it's the education. I just don't make sure that all of your questions aren't focused on money and benefits. I mean, yes, that's part of it, but when you're at the interview, and we could have a whole other session about questions to ask at the interview and things to be focused on. But the first thing I would want to hear from someone is, tell me about what it's like to work here. What's your company culture? Not what's my salary going to be and when do my benefits start, right? So I think it's the way you ask it and make sure that it's intertwined with other questions about the whole employment experience.
I agree with that.
Okay, so I think we are just about at our time here, and we want to thank both Joan and Julie for spending the afternoon with our students and our staff. And I know that we had some other guests that were on the workshop today, and so we definitely appreciate everything that you all have done. I know that I think that you both may have already shared your information in the chat for people to be able to reach out. I think you had mentioned earlier, so please feel free to connect with them as they had indicated, either by email or via LinkedIn. And Dana, was there anything else that you wanted to share before we ended our workshop today?
No, I think we've covered. I think it was some good advice, and obviously being prepared is really the biggest battle as you're going into these things, and once you're ready, you can be comfortable and confident about going in to negotiate your salary or to negotiate a raise. And it's up to you to take charge of your career, as our guests really drove home in here. So I appreciate all the time. And please do go ahead and follow up with checking out Career Connection and the labor market information as resources as you're going forward and working on your career development and looking for jobs.
And just to let everyone know as well, you'll receive an email that will just have a few questions for a survey. We'd like to get some feedback. We've been able to provide these workshops and collaborate for the entire 4 months, I guess, that we've all been teleworking and doing things in virtual format. So we'd like to be able to continue to collaborate across the campus and with our partners in the community. And by giving us feedback, that helps us to know what topics you're interested in hearing more about, or learning about that we haven't touched on. So when you get that survey, we do ask that you take the 60 seconds that it would really take you to complete that information, excuse me, to give us that feedback so that we can continue to offer more opportunities. Again, we look forward to seeing you all hopefully next week with our last 2 sessions. And we hope that everyone has a great afternoon, and we will see you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck with everybody with their negotiations.
Yes, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.